TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big-name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right, new music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
I think be a leader, make a difference. That's really, I think, in every meeting, every discussion, every dinner, luncheon, go into it with the idea of how can I add value? What can I do that will be positive, helpful, in the right spirit to improve the team or individual?
Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Well, I hope all is well with you today. It is another beautiful day here in North Carolina, and this episode is brought to you by our sponsors, the Fraternity of Excellence, the Sasquatch Flag Company, and Jeremy Clevenger Fitness. These sponsors help me bring these shows to you each and every week, so I encourage you to click on their links below and check them out. I have another great show lined up for you today, but before we get started, I just want to remind you to check out the leadership books I've written on either Amazon or my website, johnsrennie.com. This year, I'm offering a new way to purchase all of my books for a discount. I've bundled the books into what I call the Qualified Leadership Series, and you get all 3 books for 15% off the individual prices. This offer is only available on my website, so check it out if you're looking to step up your leadership game this year. Also, I want to remind you that Deep Leadership is ranked as a top 100 management podcast in the U.S. and in the U.K., and I wanted to thank each and every one of you for listening in each week and sharing these episodes with your friends. You have helped this podcast grow into a top-performing show, so thank you very much. Well, that is it. Today we're going to be talking about leadership styles, and my guest is Paul Thornton. Paul has been leading people for more than 40 years and has written 20 books on the subject. We sat down and talked about the 3 specific leadership styles that leaders need to employ to more effectively lead their teams. Now, this was an enlightening conversation with someone who has deep knowledge in leadership, and I know you will enjoy it as much as I did. So, are you ready to dive in? Let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Leadership. Leadership is a people business. That's the philosophy of your podcast host, John Rennie. As a former Cold War submarine officer who spent 20 plus years leading businesses in corporate America before starting his own manufacturing business, he knows that leadership matters. Are you ready for some real-world actionable advice from John as well as his expert guests?
I'm ready.
The show starts right now.
Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Paul Thornton. Paul has been a student and teacher of management and leadership concepts for more than 40 years. He has written 20 books and countless articles on how to successfully lead people. Throughout his career, he has been a manager, a leader, a coach, and a consultant. And I'm excited to have him on the show to talk about his book called Leadership Styles. So, Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. I am pleased to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. It's great to have you on the show. Great to meet you. And man, you're a prolific author. You've written a lot of books. I've written 3, and I think that's a lot of work. So 20 is my hat's off to you. That's a lot of work. So yeah, absolutely. One of the things I want to start off with is tell us a little bit about your career and especially when you developed your passion for management and leadership issues.
Okay, I played hockey in high school, and my team was kind of always like in the middle of the league. We weren't 1 or 2. We were kind of like 4th or 5th. But there were 2 teams that were always near the top. And it got me wondering, what is it about these teams that they're 1 or 2 year in and year out? And I concluded at a pretty young age that it had something to do with the coach or coaches. And that kind of got me interested in what are these coaches doing to bring out the best in the players? What is their techniques? What is their style? What do they do differently than my coach? I wanted to be number 1 or number 2 in the league, but we weren't. So that kind of started me or got me curious about it. I went to college, and I was fortunate to have Paul Hersey and Ken Blanchard, who developed the situational leadership model. I had them both as professors, and they were great. And they further stimulated my interest in, what do the best leaders do? What do they, how do they bring out the best in people? So that got me very excited about it. And I took every course I could with them and learned a lot and got really excited about the field. And then I entered the business world and, further observed a lot of leaders and managers and, again, studied what they did and what they didn't do and always try to find out what is it the best leaders do to make people succeed and how do they motivate them and train them, develop them, all that type of thing. So that kind of started a lifelong, lifelong interest in the topic of leadership and management. So that kind of got me going. But it goes back to my early days playing hockey.
I love it. And it's great to hear that Ken Blanchard was an influence on your life. It certainly was in my life as well.
Yeah.
And we've had an opportunity to have him on the show here. And that was like, meeting one of my heroes. It was a pretty wild chance to get a chance to interview him for sure. Yeah, in your opinion, you've been, looking at these issues for a long time, like myself. But what do you see as the difference between management and leadership?
Good question, John. I think managers use the current methods, procedures, policies to get things done. I think the leader is more focused on change. They want to change the status quo. I think managers like stability and leaders like change. Now, I think we need both. We need stability. We also need change. I think too much of either one can be problematic. And I see companies getting in trouble sometimes when they're trying to pursue too many changes all at once, and it gets out of control, and people can only handle so much change at any given time. On the other hand, some companies are stuck with, doing it the same old way, and they don't change as quickly as they should, and they get behind the eight ball and they're in trouble. So I think that's kind of a key difference I see between the two of them.
I love that you point that out. One of the early criticism of me as a leader was that I never rested. I was always like, okay, we got to this level. I want to get to the next level. I want to get to the next level. So I was the guy that was trying to always change. And the feedback I got was like, give us a break, give us a little chance to rest. And so we've got to a new plateau of performance. Let us operate in this plateau before you push us to the next level. And I realized that you can't be a leader if you're so far out in front that people aren't catching up to you. So that actually taught me a lot in those early leadership days of like being able to say, okay, we've reached a new plateau. Let's operate here. Let's learn it. Let's operate and learn from it. So it's almost like you can lead and you can make those changes, but you do have to have some time to actually absorb. And I think, like you say, managers do a better job at running that status quo and getting the most efficiency out of that new plateau level.
Right.
And I always
managing. And managing is not a bad thing. Today the glamour is the word leader and leadership and what have you, and I'm all for that. But managers are very important in getting things done using existing techniques and processes, and all that is really important. I read about one company that was pursuing like 18 different change initiatives at the same time, and the employees were stressed out. They didn't know which end was up. They were confused. They didn't know what the priorities were, and it quickly fell apart. And, you don't want that obviously as a leader either. So you're right. Too much is not good. Change is critical for all of us, but make a change, let it kind of soak in for a while, and then go to the next level, I think is a good way to think about it.
Certainly something I learned in my journey as a leader, for sure. One of the things you say is that leading is a process. And I thought that was kind of interesting that you put it that way. What are some of the major steps in that process?
Well, I think there are 4 steps that leaders go through. I think step number 1 is diagnosing the current situation. And I think that's really important to spend time and get clarity on what's currently going on. What's working, what isn't working. Where are the successes? Where are the problems? Who's performing well? Who isn't? All that. Looking at the hard data. What do the numbers tell you about the performance of the group or team or organization? So that's step number one. Number two is identifying opportunities to improve. I think every leader, as I said before, wants to improve the status quo. So where are the opportunities? What changes could we make? Could we change the structure, the strategy, the processes, the people? What can we do differently to be more successful? And then step number three, part of step number two is then prioritizing. You can't pursue 8 things or 20 things at once. So what are the 1 or 2 things you want to go after? Step 3 is then packaging your message. How are you going to present your big idea to your organization, your team? How are you going to get them excited about it and committed to it and energized by it? And then step 4 is, what is the plan and implementation you're going to take to make it happen? So I think those are kind of 4 steps leaders go through. I think what I find is sometimes leaders don't do an adequate job in step 1. They skip over that and really don't get a good, clear understanding of what's going on now. What are the major issues and problems and obstacles and that. And I think also presenting their message, sometimes they need to be crystal clear.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're not. And they need to be excited about it and have passion and believe in their message to convince others that this is the way to go. And of course, you were in the manufacturing world for a long time. The importance of implementation. Theories and models and concepts are great, but how do you implement whatever change you want to make is really, really, really critical. So many things fall apart during implementation that's a biggie for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, really, I didn't know you were going to cover it in these steps, but I can tell you this as an experienced leader who has basically, my job is to turn around struggling manufacturing operations. They threw me in 8 different times to turn around manufacturing businesses. But these are the steps, I would say, almost identical steps that I had to go through every time. And I would say the first 100 days for me is step 1 and 2. So is spending time. I didn't do a lot of speaking. I didn't do a lot of talking during those days. I did a lot of listening. And so I really do encourage leaders when they come into a new role like this to spend time talking with as many people as you can to be able to diagnose the problem. I think it's really important. I always say, what's working well here? What's not working well? And then if you were in my shoes, what's the first thing you would do? And I ask those 3 questions to as many people as I can. I try to do 100% of the workforce. And I get this data, that's this rich data. And what I end up finding out is that the issues, right, are pretty much, they consolidate over 2 or 3 or 4 different issues that have to be addressed every time I've done it.
Yep.
And so I think these 1 and 2 steps are really important. But then I like what you say in that 3rd step is packaging the message so it's easily understood. Because we tend to, as leaders, we tend to sometimes make things complicated. And I've found, at least with working with manufacturing groups, hourly employees, you've got to be concise, clear, and have a few key points. Right. Otherwise, you're going to lose them. You got to repeat that message over and over again. So really like that. That's a really, it's just, again, as a practitioner, I would say these steps work for sure.
I like what you said, John, about the need to ask a lot of questions, listen to people, get viewpoints from multiple directions, employees, senior management, the customer, suppliers. Everyone's got a different view of the current situation. So collect all that and then put the pieces together and figure out, what is going on and what's the big problem, what's the big opportunity, what can I do to make a difference and add value, et cetera. So yeah, that's really important.
Yeah, I love that. The book that we're going to talk about today is Leadership Styles. So when you think about that book, who was the target audience for that book, and what's the big ideas that you put into the book?
Well, these days, I think of the target audience as anyone who's dealing with people. And it could be a parent, a coach, a teacher, a manager, a leader. It doesn't matter. If you're dealing with people, I think the 3 styles I discuss are relevant and useful and meaningful. And I boil it down to the 3 Ds as an easy way to remember it. Directing is one style, discussing, and delegating. And I think we all use these styles every day. Matter of fact, in the same meeting, you might use all 3 styles, but they're very, applicable to, like I say, coaches, parents, teachers. All of them use those styles day in and day out. So the better we can get at using those, the more effective we can be.
So let's talk about them. So those 3 styles you mentioned, how do leaders use these specific styles in their roles as either leaders or coaches or teachers, or maybe even a family, like the father with children?
No, that's good question. Directing style, basically, you're telling the person what to do, how to do it, when to have it done by. You're doing most of the talking, and hopefully the other person doing a lot of listening. There are certain situations when you need to be direct. If the person has no experience, limited skills in what they need to do, they need direction. They want direction. They want a roadmap of the steps they need to take, the process they need to follow to get the job done. Sometimes the problem I see here is sometimes managers go overboard and they provide too much direction. It's like micromanaging,
right?
They're going into every little thing and they're overdoing it. So too much is not good. On the other hand, some do too little. If you leave out important points and, miss important details, that's not good either. So you got to be direct. You got to be a good communicator. You got to be clear, concise, to the point. You got to make sure you give the person everything they need to do whatever it has to do, whatever they have to do in the fashion that it needs to be done. And you also have to give them a date to have it done by. That's obvious. But parents do that with their children. Coaches do that with their athletes. Managers do that with their employees. There's a time and place to be directing. The second one is discussing. You're asking questions about what's the goal, plan, obstacles, issues. How do you see it? What do you think we should do? You're basically getting people involved in their thoughts and ideas on what we should do to get the task done or solve the problem, whatever it might be. When you use a discussing style, you're really teaching people how to think, right? You're requiring them to formulate answers to your questions. You're helping them to learn how to collaborate, to build on the ideas of others, to ask good questions, things like that. Again, one of the problems I see with discussion, we've all been in meetings where the meeting goes on and on and on and on, and too much discussion is as bad as too little. So at some point, you got to make a decision. On the other hand, sometimes managers don't like to discuss anything. They like to direct everything, and that's not good. People feel like they didn't have a voice, they didn't have any input, they didn't have any say, so they're not as committed to the goal or plan as they need to be. So that's not good. The third style is delegating. Delegating, you're empowering the person or team to take action on their own, take the initiative, figure things out, get the task done by the date it needs to be done by. Problem there again, some managers and leaders do too much delegation. We like to delegate to our superstar who we know is going to do a great job. they get burnt out or they get overloaded or stressed out, and that's not good. Some managers can't let go, so they underdelegate. They don't really involve or delegate as much as they should be. So they kind of get overwhelmed and they become the bottleneck in the organization. So that's a problem. So on each of these, they're easy concepts, but there's little traps and things you got to be mindful of to make sure you're doing the right amount and you're doing it in the right situation. I think there's a time and place for each style that will be most effective to help the people grow, develop, and get the task done. That's important.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Leadership skills are like any other skills. You need to practice them to get better at them. Best-selling leadership author John S. Rennie knows this. That's why he's written a new book called You Have the Watch. It's a guided journal for leaders designed to take you through an entire year of leadership training. By the end of the year, you will master 50 of the most important leadership skills. If you want to have a greater impact on the results and people in your organization, go to youhavethewatch.com and pick up your copy today.
This episode is brought to you by the Fraternity of Excellence. The Fraternity of Excellence is an online and real-world community for men who are looking to improve in all areas of their lives. The men of FOE are working together to become better husbands, fathers, and leaders at work and in their communities. They live by a simple philosophy: as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Now, I've been a member for more than 3 years, and for me, I finally found a brotherhood of men that I was missing from my time in the military. Now, I love being around guys who are dedicated to becoming a better version of themselves. So if you're interested in becoming a man of excellence as well, go to fraternityofexcellence.com, or you can reach out directly to me to learn more. This episode is brought to you by the Sasquatch Flag Company. The Sasquatch Flag Company is a family-owned business in New England that builds hand-carved American flags from seasoned white pine. Each flag is hand-built, and each star on the flag is hand-hammered and chiseled. No two flags are alike. They offer a variety of flag designs to honor the police, military, firefighters, dispatchers, and search and rescue personnel, to name a few. These stunning handmade flags look great in an office, a studio, the back porch, or above the fireplace mantle. They make the perfect gift for the veteran, first responder, or patriot in your life. Now, I love these flags, and I've been giving them as gifts for years, and I was a customer long before they became a sponsor of the show. I can't recommend them enough. So if you're looking for that perfect, uniquely American-made gift to give away, or if you want to treat yourself, go to sasquatchflags.com and get your order in today. This episode is brought to you by Jeremy Clevenger Fitness. As a high-performing leader, you know that leadership isn't about telling people what to do. It's about leading by example. And for most people, the one area that they're lacking when it comes to leading by example is their health and fitness. By improving your health and fitness, every other area of your life improves. But how do you get and stay fit as a busy leader? Well, you do what you've always done. You hire the best person for the job. Don't struggle on your own. Put Jeremy Clevenger on your team. Jeremy will work with you to take your physique, mindset, nutritional habits, and more to the next level with his step-by-step, all-inclusive coaching program. Now, I've worked with Jeremy for the past year, and I'm in the best shape of my life. If you want to step up your game, reach out to Jeremy at apexperformancesystems.com to find out more and get your initial consultation scheduled with him today.
One of the things you bring up, and I think it's really important, I talk about it in my second book, is the idea of balance. And I think what you said, each one of these dimensions, there's an opportunity to be too much, right? Yep. Too much directing, too little, right? So the micromanager versus what I call the absent manager, right? So they're not directing anything. They're not involved, and so both are problematic. So one of the things that I've found, at least in leadership, is that you take any sort of measure of leadership, and there's always has to be a balance. You have to find that right perfect mix that works with the team, that's most effective with managing the team. And if you go too far on one end or the other, you end up creating problems in the organization. So I love how you say, these are great styles, and you have to use them when in different specific areas, but also you have to balance the amount of use, because all three of them can be problematic if done too much or too little.
Right. I couldn't agree more, John. And I think, some managers think that as a manager, my job is to make all the decisions and tell people what to do and be directing. And, that's the only style they use. And of course, that's not effective. And people get demotivated when the manager's constantly telling them what to do, even though they know what to do. They know how to do it. They don't need to be told for the 28th time, this is how you do X, Y, Z. They know. So just delegate and say, take care of it. Yeah. And they will. And they'll do a good job. So, I agree. There's too much or too little. Finding that right spot to be at is critical for each of the three styles.
One of the things as an entrepreneur myself, and I've seen with other entrepreneurs, is that they have a hard time delegating. So it's their baby and they hold on to like, I'm a technical expert, or I'm really good with customers, or I really know how to run this manufacturing plan. So they hold those things that they're comfortable with really tight to the vest. And so that prevents their companies from growing because they are the limiting factor in their organization. So they have a hard time letting go and letting others take, lead in certain specific areas. And so they stunt their growth by holding on too tightly to everything. And I see that as a problem with entrepreneurs.
Yeah, entrepreneurs have invested a lot of money and time and effort into their project, and they're sometimes very slow to let go and empower other people. But that frustrates the worker who wants the bigger job to do or the bigger role to perform. They want to show what they can do. And they are capable, and you're going to demotivate them and turn them off, and that's not what you want to do. So,
One of the things about delegating that was something we learned in the military, they taught us, is they said that you could delegate authority but not responsibility. And what that meant was we could give the authority to people that work for us to accomplish certain tasks. So give them all the authority they needed to be able to do that task. But the leader never gave up the responsibility. In other words, if something went wrong, they would own it. The leader would own it. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I noticed in corporate life was we sort of reversed that. So when I was in corporate, we would delegate responsibility. So we would hold people accountable if anything went wrong, but then we wouldn't give them the authority, wouldn't give them the tools. So a lot of the managers kept those close to the vest. And so I think the idea of delegation when it comes to authority and responsibility, those are kind of two things that I always think about when I'm doing that. Is I say, look, I'm going to give you all the authority to make that happen, but anything goes wrong, I got your back as the leader, because essentially the leader is responsible for the organization. You can never delegate that. Although, like I said, in corporate, I saw a lot of people trying to delegate. Oh, that guy screwed up, I'm going to fire him. Well, actually, you screwed up by assigning him to that task, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So.
Yeah, that's so true. And another problem you just mentioned is delegating tasks to the wrong person. If the person is not at all capable, or they're just not ready for the assignment you're going to give them, and you delegate that to them, well, you shouldn't have done that. That's really not effective delegation. I also see a lot of leaders, when they delegate a task, they really don't discuss or explain to the person what power do they have to make decisions and how far can they go before they have to face back with you and, discuss it with you before they can go to that next level, so to speak. Yeah. So, that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very important. So as you're doing delegation tasks, there's a lot to think about. And one thing you touched on, which I really like, is that we tend to give too much to our senior people. And it's one thing I saw in corporate is we're risk averse, so we delegate to our experienced people, right? The more difficult tasks, and then these young newcomers to our organization who just spent 4 years in college, maybe, or maybe 6 years, and they've got all their certifications, all their qualifications, they're excited, ready to go. And they never get anything to do because we give all the tasks to the senior people who are overworked. And then we have one group that's bored and one group that's overworked. And we've got to make sure that we get those, delegate to the younger people, the newer people, and give them opportunities to shine as well, too. Otherwise, they're going to go find a place where they're going to get challenged.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's good. So what are some other things that, what is one thing the audience needs to remember about leading people? What's something unique that you talk about in your books when it comes to leading people?
Well, I think one of my big ideas is that leaders need to add value. They need to identify what they can do through their words or actions to help people grow and develop and achieve the goals, and get things done. Obviously is important, but what can I do to improve the person's situation? As I say, it might be through your example, it might be through the words of encouragement, or it might be delegating a project to them to let them show what they can do. But the leader needs to be focused on the people and figure out what actions they can take to bring out the best in people and help them, as I say, grow and develop. I think that's very important.
Yeah. So it's not, I say this a lot, leadership is a people business. It's not an email business. It's not a to-do list business.
Right.
You're dealing with people, and you're trying to find, like you said, how do we get the best out of them? How do we, how do we work with them to bring out their best, right? Because I've had leaders, I've worked for that. They saw in me things I didn't see, and I think the best leaders do that. They're like, Joe's got something there. I think that if we give him an opportunity, he can really shine. So they bring out the best in their people if you're really good at leading people.
Yeah, I think leaders have the great leaders have the ability to find out that one or two things inside the person that really energizes them and is the source of great passion and energy for that person. And they somehow help the person figure that out and get clear on what that is, and end up having a highly energized, motivated, excited person on your team. Everyone's unique too. I mean, everyone's got a different cause or I don't know, thing inside them that stimulates them and motivates them to want to excel and, change the world and be the best they can be, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So that's important for all leaders. It's hard to do though. It's not easy to figure out what is it, that thing inside the person that is going to make them want to go to the next level,
Yeah.
A lot of people like being in their comfort zone and, life is good and I'm fine. And why do I want to do X, Y, Z, Well, you want to do it because it's more exciting. It's more invigorating. You'll be happier. You'll be more thrilled, that type of thing. It's hard to package that.
Yeah. Well, and you can't work to bring out the best in people if you don't know your people. I think the sad fact is that some managers get promoted and they might be great individual contributors and they get promoted to management and they stick to the things they're comfortable with, and so they never make that leap into, okay, now I have a new job. I'm no longer an individual contributor. I am responsible for this team and the goals of that team. And we make that shift and transition. So, which means getting out and knowing your people and knowing how to bring out their best. You got to know your people if you're going to want to try to find how they're motivated. I think we sometimes too many managers get promoted and they sort of go back to their offices and they work on their to-do list, versus getting out and knowing their people and getting to understand what motivates them.
Yep. Yeah. Same thing happens when you get married, John. When I was single, it was all about me, my needs, my issues, my goals. When I got married, I'm like, oh, I got to be concerned about my wife's goals and her needs and her wants and, what she wants to accomplish. And, the world changes, as we know. So.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Yes, very much so. Great analogy. I love that. What final message would you like to leave with our audience that are listening in today?
Well, I think my message I often talk about is be a leader, make a difference, add value, believe in yourself, believe in your message. We need more leaders today. We need people who are willing to state their views, be confident in your beliefs, speak up in meetings. When you see people violating values or your core beliefs, speak up, talk to them, let them know how you feel about it. So I think be a leader, make a difference. That's really adding value to the situation. I think in every meeting, every discussion, every dinner, luncheon, go into it with the idea of how can I add value? What can I do that will be positive, helpful, in the right spirit to improve the team or individual? I think that's a good way to look at it.
Absolutely. Fantastic. I love that. Be a leader, make a difference. I love that. It's a great message. So this has been a really good discussion, Paul. How can people find out more about you and all the books that you've written?
Well, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I have a page there, a site there. I post quite often on there. I try to post almost every day some view on leadership or something that's going on in my head about leadership. As you said earlier, John, I've written a number of books. They're all available on Amazon. My books are short and to the point, and I like to think they're clear and organized and concise. Most of them are like 75 pages or 85 pages. So if you want to read one of my books, I have one on leadership styles. I have one on the leadership process. I have another one on aligning your organization, which I think is a very important topic as well. But anyway, they're all available on Amazon. And if you want to, read more about some of my ideas, you can find them there.
Absolutely. We'll put links in the show notes for those resources. And, it's funny because we started this discussion with you, learning leadership from Ken Blanchard. And one of the things he does well is he writes short books. And the reason why he writes them is so that people actually read them and apply the knowledge. And I really like that. So we're going to put links in the show notes for all these resources. I really highly encourage you to check out Paul's books. We talked a lot about leadership styles here, but again, he's got some other great books just recently coming out that talked about the leadership process and others. But the leadership style one is really good. I really like the way you took the approach to those three styles. So, Paul, I want to thank you for coming on the show, and thanks for sharing this your observations and your ideas with respect to leadership, because I think it's given us a lot to think about. So I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks, John. I enjoyed it and love talking about leadership.
I do as well. So
thank you so
much. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.
Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and updates, please visit our website at www.deepleadershippodcast.com or johnsrennie.com. Until next time, take care.
Welcome to the Reverie channel, where entertainment knows no bounds. Live concerts, on-demand music, documentaries, and short films, all in stunning HD. Now on Roku TV, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Immerse yourself from home. And on Android and iOS for those on the move. Support creators with crowdfunding donations. Fuel their creativity. Join us in shaping entertainment's future. The Reverie channel, where every view, every donation matters.
Electricast.
Welcome to Tuning Into Sound Wellbeing, where we harmonise your mind, body and soul. I'm Amanda, your sound therapy expert.
And I'm Stephen, the curious explorer uncovering the mysteries of sound.
Together we explore vibrations, frequencies, and the power of sound therapy and tuning forks.
Discover ancient wisdom, reduce stress, and tune into a healthier life. Subscribe to Tuning Into Sound Wellbeing today.